Hi, this is John with Fix It Planet, and today we've got this iPhone 6 Plus with Touch IC disease and the classic gray bar showing at the top of the display and no touch function. This has been around for a long time, so pretty much everybody who does this sort of thing knows about it, and we just haven't had any videos uploaded. Though we've been doing some of these repairs, we haven't had a microscope camera up until just recently. So I thought, now that we've got one in front of us and we've got this microscope camera now, we're going to go ahead and do one for our channel as well, just to show that we are capable. We've done backlight repairs on the iPhones as well, and power managements and all kinds of stuff, but we just haven't had a microscope camera to do these videos with. So I just wanted, this one is basically start to finish, other than we are going to skip through some of taking the board out and putting it back in the phone. We're going to leave a little bit of it in there, but we're going to skip through some of that just for the sake of time. And we're going to show the process. We are going to replace the Mason chip in this case, and we will show that from start to finish under the microscope. Yay! So I'm not real thrilled with the microscope camera that we do have. I ended up getting the HD 205 WU from Amscope, and I probably should have thought that one through a little bit better. I got kind of impatient because we hadn't had one and I needed to get one really bad. So finally just decided, screw it, I'm just going to order that one. That should be good enough, right? Yeah, not so much. It's okay, but it's not great. So, whatever. Eventually I'll get a better one. I actually was looking for one that I know is really good, but I kind of backed out on that one and ended up getting this one. So I ended up buying a Magewell USB capture HDMI Plus for video capturing, which I thought was actually really good. I like that. And this Amscope camera, I think altogether that ended up costing me about $850. So we'll have to use this one for a while, and then eventually I'll probably put it on my inspection scope and get me a better one for this one. But at least we can do these types of videos now we weren't able to do before. And this is the Mason chip. This is actually U2402, and we are going to do continuity check between the M1 pad to the Pen 1 pad on U2403. And we'll see that a little bit later on. So it seemed like I could get a sweet spot where it would focus really well, and then other places where it would be kind of fuzzy. But it wasn't like crystal clear on every part of the screen, and that was kind of frustrating for me. Seems like also the lighting, the exposure, all these kinds of things are things I'm going to have to play around with a little bit. See if I can't improve on that some. It seems to be fine in some places, and other places not so much. So I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I think after we've used it a little bit, I'll probably be able to at least work with that a little better. So in a lot of these particular repairs, I'll find pads that are already coming up underneath, and so you never know what you're going to find. And especially if the phone's been dropped a lot. In this case, basically, I expected to find something underneath that wasn't quite right, a pad lifting up or something like this. Maybe thought I would have to run a jumper from that on that M1 pad, but actually found that the pads were all really solid and really intact, fully intact. But there was a little bit of oxidation on a few of these pads, and that's probably where the balls had gotten cracks. So you should be able to see those. It looks like they're pretty obvious. In any case, at least the pads weren't pulling up or anything like that, and I was really surprised. So we're just going to go through and clean all this up with some fresh solder. And I also noticed, for example, whenever I clean the tip on my soldering iron, that it makes the camera on the microscope just sort of vibrate. You'll see that every time I clean the tip of my soldering iron. So basically we want all of these pads where these solder balls are going to be nice and shiny. I want to make sure there's no oxidation or any other crud. Before we put the new chip on. So you can see there's a vibration that occurs every time I clean my soldering iron tip. So we don't want any of the old solder left. We're just going to go through and make sure that we have all fresh solder on there. I'm not actually wicking it off, but I am going to go over it really well with this wedge tip iron. And make sure that all of those solder ball points, all those pads are nice and shiny and even and clean. So I've got to get a better capture, not screen capture, but a better capture software that captures the camera. And this one is capturing at 30 frames a second, but the videos are done at 60 frames a second. And I would like a capture, some software that would capture for real 60 frames a second under the camera. That I think would help a great deal. Right now I'm experimenting with different software to do that. Some of the ones I've tried, you know, they say they're doing it at 60 frames a second, but they're actually not. Some of them say they're doing it at 30 frames a second, but they're not. So it's kind of weird. So I haven't actually paid for any software yet until I can find some that is reliable and actually does exactly what it says it's doing. When I set it for 60 frames a second, it actually captures at 60 frames a second. That would be nice. But the best I could find on short notice at this point was 30 frames a second, and that's what we're using at this point. The Open Broadcaster supposedly could do the screen capture at 60 frames a second, so I may just go with that. But the thing is I'd like to be able to get a little more in the image in the screen, but unfortunately, you know, I'm using a Barlow lens and 50% reduction lens on the camera, and I'm still getting, you know, less in the frame than I can see under the microscope with my own eyes. So I don't know, if I use OBS, it's basically going to capture the whole screen, not just the camera. And I don't want that. It's okay. I mean, I can widen out, like in this particular shot here. I've widened out a little bit, so I can still get quite a bit more in there if I want to. Now we're checking continuity between M1 and pin 1 on 4203. And we've got continuity. It's really good. It's really strong. I was really trying to decide if I wanted to run a jumper on the M1 there just to add some strength to it, but everything was in such good condition, and it was really, I just decided against it. But so far it hasn't come back, and it's been a little over a month now. And this one was in really good condition underneath, except for some oxidation. Other than that, it was really perfect. So, frankly, there probably wasn't anything wrong with the chip either, actually. but we went ahead and got a new one and put it on there. You could pretty well see where it was, where the solder balls had cracked and gotten some oxidation underneath in between there. So you can kind of see when I change the angle of the board, then all of a sudden, you know, the lettering on the chip shows up perfectly, things like that. So, and then I think all that has to do with lighting, because as you get the, you know, hot air station in closer, the lettering shows back up, but it's still a little bit weird. So I'm gonna have to experiment with that a little bit and play around and see if I can get it better. So it did snap into place right there a little bit, but it was still a little bit off. It's not quite where I want it. So I kept on. So we're a little bit crooked now. We're starting to get nice melting underneath, but it's a little crooked, so I'm gonna work with this just a little bit until it snaps perfectly into position. And that should be pretty obvious when it happens. There we go. That's what we want. Pretty. Good to go now. Alright, so we're going to clean this board up. We're going to get everything ready and put this thing back in the phone. Quick test. Just to make sure the phone's all the way in the frame. Close out the quick Flux test. Show that the gray bar is also gone and that there's not going to come back. So we do have touch function now, and we're just doing a quick sort of test and nothing extensive here, just to kind of demonstrate it is working. We do a much more thorough test if we're not on camera, so we're just trying to keep the runtime short as possible on the video. Still running a little over 20 minutes. In any case, we're going to go ahead and put our brackets back on here and close this all the way up. And we'll do one more quick test with a little bit of flexing. So we're going to flex it a little bit, make sure that that bar doesn't show back up and that touch function remains. And we are looking pretty solid there, so we're happy with that. Hopefully this video was at least interesting to someone out there, and we'll see you next time. Like and share and subscribe. Thanks. Bye-bye now.